That's really the topic that I always kind of think about. Like when I see video games, like, well, how much, because even with like kind of funner games, like my son plays like Raymond a lot.
Oh, Raymond's cool. Yeah.
But it's still like punching people in the face and stuff. And sometimes I kind of think like, well, how, like, I wonder what this is doing for his psyche. Because some imaginary play is healthy because kids need to work things out. Especially like young boys, they want to play with like concepts of power. It's part of like development, like being stronger than something or outmaneuvering something. This is all like very core instincts that you need to work on.
It's the same argument that a lot of people make for individuals who listen to harder music, to heavy metal, punk, music that is sort of it's very aggressive.
Yeah,
to someone who
messes you up, dude.
Well, yes and no. And no.
Because you want to say it's an outlet.
I want to say, yeah, basically. I mean, it kind of that's the argument that most people do make, is that it is an outlet. It's kind of what you listen to, so you don't have to express those emotions in a non-conventional way. Like you can just sit back, listen to your metal, and be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, angry thoughts, and then afterwards you just become so desensitized that it kind of just fades away and turns into nothing. That's kind of the feeling that you're trying to catch, is just over consuming this exact same emotion, this very destructive emotion, and then you get to a certain point where it doesn't matter as much as it initially did. So when you're listening, so if I have a bad day, I'm totally guilty of this. If I'm having a bad day, I'll sit back, listen to metal music, the worst metal music, death metal, doom metal. I'll sit back and just listen to that for an hour, and then afterwards I'll be like, I'm gonna get some food now. I feel nice. Like that works for me. It's very therapeutic for me because I don't have to deal with that emotion. I can let the music deal with it. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can just deal with something else doing that. It's the same reason why a lot of people would sit back and watch drama shows, because they don't want the drama in their life, but they don't mind watching drama.
I don't know, dude. I agree with you. I think that there isn't like a punching pillows like aspect to like metal music. But I am a big believer in overall brain programming.
Sure.
I think we curate our emotions based on the things we use to stimulate our brains and like what we bank in our memory. So yeah, like someone like, maybe something like the Dalai Lama,
Sure.
If you're living in Tibet, when he was a kid, if you're raised in Tibet and you spend a lot of time meditating and like caring for like animals in like in a productive way, I think your input from that type of life is going to be very kind of slow and compassionate, and you're going to kind of carry those emotions with you. Whereas, if you're raised in Manhattan and maybe you're in a situation where it's a very loud neighborhood, and maybe your dad is in like a metal band, and you go home at night to sleep, and your dad's got like 4 dudes in the living room, like drinking beer and talking big. You're constantly bathed in that. So eventually the output's going to be very similar to that.
Right. That's like environmental conditioning. That's something that you can't control that. That's the worst part. Like depending on where you lived, how you grew up, like that's not something that it's out of your power. Sure. To a certain point, to a certain age where you can start slowly starting to rationalize and like, you know what, maybe it wasn't okay that I grew up like this, and it wasn't okay that I was feeling this way and all of that. But that's kind of one of the worst parts, where that's your environment. Those are other outliers that you literally have no control over. Gaming and entertainment that we consume have a similar effect, but the choice is purely yours to make. I feel like that's a bit less impactful. Of course, there's always going to be that age where it does matter. An 8-year-old is going to register what's going on register events in a video game differently than a 15-year-old.
Sure, of course.
And vice versa. That's just how it works. But The difference between the two is the fact that you're choosing to consume that, and you're not being forced to do something like that. That is evidently your choice. If you're too young to realize that, then regardless, that's still the choice that this 8-year-old is going to make, no matter what. You know, you're not going to force an 8-year-old to. I mean, maybe you might. You might be that parent who plays violent video games, and the 8-year-old is right behind them, hanging out because they want to hang out with daddy. And you're playing Call of Duty and calling people the worst thing possible, and you got your kid right next to you, like that. Okay, that's different. That's, again, environmental. That's part of your environmental setup, everything, and that's going to mess with you, I think. But if you're that kid who has access to this and chooses to play those violent video games, that's a completely different outcome. Like, you just have different kids.
I agree, but I still think there's definitely something to information in and information out, or information in and reactions later.
Yeah.
Like whether it was chosen or if it was or intentional or unintentional. The way our brain experiences the world definitely has a reaction. And like the reason that, you know, I was like attracted to like punk rock and like heavier music is because I was like, I was looking for something that sounded like what was already going on, like emotionally. Like that was like, it was like, holy shit. Like obviously these dudes have felt and thought the same things I did because this sounds like me.
Right.
So,
I mean, yeah, that's, yeah. The same thing for metal, you know, like I made too many parallels with metal music as a young kid. I made too many relations with the metal music that I was listening to. Like, oh man, like, you know what, they really get me. And then later on I realized like, this is just like this music it's good music, but like they're totally not about that. And it's kind of,
they were about that in Leatherface, but you know,
right.
By the time you get to the Black Album,
right.
It's good.
Right.
But it's a performance at that point.
What I think is very interesting is I've seen growing up. I'm a full-on victim of, not victim. That's the wrong. I've been there since almost the start of actual gaming culture, where it really grew. It didn't grow legs. It grew wheels.
Oh yeah.
It grew monster truck wheels from the day I was born till now. It's a skyrocket difference between before, after, right I'm born, and then after. I've seen both spectrums. I've seen the kid who played all the violent video games and was actually inherently violent and had these very troublesome thoughts and acted on those all the time, and still played Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen I've seen a different kid grew up playing these exact same violent video games, similar ages, but this was the nicest kid in the world, never did anything.
Sure.
And that's something that I don't understand at all. That doesn't make any sense to me.
That's aptitude and personality and IQ and a whole other series of things. And then that's people that, I mean, there's some people that want to play violent games because they're just curious about violence. And then there's other people that want to express violence and have power. And then there's some people that just see it as a dopamine hit. And it doesn't really matter if they're bashing faces or, you know, matching blocks, you know, in Tetris.
Yeah.
I mean, we know this for a fact that video games is a dopamine addiction. And the scary part of a dopamine addiction with video games is that that dopamine system is there to help you. So you're creating a false system for something that should be rewarding you with something that benefits your life.
Okay.